So welcome to the Node API team meeting for June 18th, 2021. We'll follow our standard approach, which is to take a look at the issues we've tagged for milestone 11. Before we do that, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share?
Yes, we released the version 4 for Node.js API. So yeah, dropping the support for Node 10 because it's out of maintenance, and this is my announcement.
Okay, great. Now thank you for doing that release. Anybody else have any other announcements? If not, we'll flick over to the regular agenda. I will share my screen with that. Right, so the first thing at the top is the thread safety of NAPI thread safe function. So Lejindakas, I think you opened this one.
I don't have time to work on the reproduction in Node.js API, either on the thread that the Rust new Rust bindings. So we will have to defer the discussion until we have a reproduction in Node.js API.
Okay, so we'll defer that till next time. Let's take a quick look at stale issues. So there, Kevin, you added that one a little while ago. Which one was that?
Yeah, it's about mine. I believe with better get it, a lot of stuff get it landed first so that I can have time to work on this.
Okay, so it's just there as a reminder so we don't forget, but that's good. We'll move on. Tracking issues. I don't think there's any new things that we've seen ported. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up on that front? I think I look at npm node add-on API. I don't think it shows any great changes. It's just sort of ticking along just under 4 million a month. Sorry, a week. So it's not doing bad, but nothing too new there. Okay. Any API issues for backport? I don't know if there's any. These ones I suspect are mostly complete. Because this is quite a while ago. So I don't think there's anything new to discuss on that front. And actually, am I looking? Maybe I'm not looking at the right label. So let me. There we go. Okay. So we've gone through that one. Right up to that one. I know I haven't enabled the debugs. So I guess now we're on to just talking about, are there any issues in either of the repos that we should talk about? Does anybody have any particular ones they want us to start with?
I guess there's one for these issues here on Node add-on API, the most recent issue. And it's basically the examples that we have for object wrap are not context sensitive. So if people are taking, just copying and pasting from the examples, they're not context sensitive. And the API that we added for context sensitivity, I guess is in Node. I guess if you scroll down, I said when it was added 6. So I don't know if that is, like, if we can use, like, how should we modify our examples to be context sensitive?
So it's only available in Node API 6. Which version of Node itself?
Let's see, 6
supports
is 6. Well, we have now gotten rid of 10 support, right?
Right.
The 6 is in 12.17 and up. So I guess it would be safe to use, because if it's on the latest 12, then I
Right.
think we should be good to go, right?
Yeah, like, so yeah, the 6 is on, you're right. And even 6 was backported to 10, wasn't it? From this
Right.
table anyway.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, I think we'd be safe to backport to like make the examples all use that.
Okay. So that's why I left that issue open. So I can work on updating the examples for that as well.
Okay, let me, sorry, I'm just gonna get back to there. That's this one? Okay.
Yes. And then I guess also if you scroll up a
Yep.
little bit here with that C number 744 in that comment. that
This
first-
one? Yep.
Yep. So this was a closed issue, but what's happening a lot of times is people are asking how to use, how to store multiple constructors on the instance data. Because
Right.
you know, if you use set instance data, it basically clears out that what was there already.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to add some sort of helper method to Node add-on API that, because if you scroll down, I put a little code block here as well. A little further. It's probably like the third to last comment or something.
Okay, let me scroll all the
Yeah,
way down
sorry.
and we'll go backwards, no problem.
Yeah. Yes, that's the example to use it, but a little further up in the same comment, I created these sort of simple template functions
Right.
that use an object reference on the
Right.
instance data, and then you can attach multiple things there. I don't know if that would be like, there's been 3 or 4 people, different issues that I've seen that have been asking about this. But it is not something that is native to Node API, you know, the C wrapper.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's something that we want to put into Node add-on API or just have an example that uses something like this. What would you say?
Yeah, it's because it's assuming that you're gonna, you know, store your instance data in a particular way, right?
Right.
Which may not be the case. Like if somebody does something else, then these helpers might not work.
Right, right. So it may make sense just to make it as a better example then.
Would it even make sense, like as a helper package? Like this is in C code though, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So it's not as easy as publishing a package that does the helper for you.
Right. Well, we have in the past discussed things like creating a helper libraries and whatnot. But I think we steered away from that because of maintenance.
Yeah.
And we had always suggested people just publish their own C++ packages that would add that functionality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think an example is probably the way to go.
Right.
Just because otherwise it could be confusing, like it assumes that you've defined it as that particular type or.
Exactly. Okay. So then I'll work on making an example with this. And then there's another PR that I have on, I guess that finishes this conversation then.
Okay, so we were just looking at issues, but if you have another one, then let's move to that one.
It was on the Node add-on examples issue for because I guess you closed out I guess there's a PR for this one here.
This one.
Yeah, and it was to add the type thread safe function. It's failing now. It's the latest one.
Sorry, this one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's failing now because that was to show the failure for the GCC bug that we had. But now that you closed it, I'll finish this one up so that it can be merged into the examples. So hopefully this one and then the new one with the instance data coming up.
Okay. that sounds good. So yeah, so basically it turns out there was a way to change the C++ code so that it would look like it would do the right thing, right?
Right.
I
It
remember,
was
yeah.
basically a change to the language where something was valid in 17, but not in 20. But some compilers still allowed it in 20, whereas GCC was more strict. So we just had to
So
change.
really, so GCC is stricter than 17.
Yes.
I guess
20.
whenever you change your compiler, so the code we have now works for either, we're not worried. But if people's modules try and compile with the newer compiler, they may run into problems. It's interesting. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we would have to address those case by case.
Yeah, I'm thinking just more like this exact example could happen in people's code, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's it. All that I have.
Okay. Does anybody have any others that they want to highlight? Back to node add-on.
I might have one to maybe we can discuss it.
Okay,
The number
sure.
is on the PR is on node.js API. The number is 1004.
Okay. This one, right?
Yeah, top one. So it's very simple change. It's just making the default value to be 0 instead of 1 when there is anything unpredictable exceptions. It's not JavaScript exceptions, but it might be, let's say, when the reference goes down from 0 to -1, then the node core will complain about it, and the invalid states will be returned. So in that case, we returning a 1 as a default value would cause confusion, since the actual value will be 0, since we are going to decrement it to -1. So that's the problem.
But I guess we don't like it. If it was 5, it wouldn't be 0, right? Like you do a decrement and it would actually be 4.
Yes. And
So
the only exception I can find in the core is that when the reference count is going to be negative value. So the only path I can see is that the throw is failed, the default value, the value return, let's say the fallback value of throw is failed is only when the ref count is being 0. So in that case, I can see that using 0 as default value will be very intuitive to what we have already.
Okay, so you think the only case where we'll ever throw an exception is you've gone negative, which is effectively 0, right?
Yes.
That's an interesting, yeah. Okay.
And since the return type is a unsigned integer, so we can't let's say returning -1 for the exception case.
Yep. Right. Yeah, I guess returning 1. And this is, yeah, so no working code should be affected by that.
Yes, I believe no working code will be affected, since we have a its exception path. So when C++ exception is enabled, then we never see the return values. And when C++ exception is disabled, then that's the case, the fallback value will be observable.
I assume in your maybe like with maybes enabled, it would also get something that it would be empty effectively, right?
No, the maybe is only enabled for is only wrapping the function calling into JavaScript, but the reference isn't going to JavaScript, so we don't have a maybe wrapping on the return value. So when you got a maybe wrapped value, it means that there might be a JavaScript exception pending, but for this, it's not going to call into any JavaScript. So
right, but it doesn't it set an exception? Or is it just an error code?
I believe written error code will be more intuitive.
Oh, sorry, I want to see the code there. So you got what is NAP? Does NAPI reference set an exception? So NAPI. Oops. Node API NAPI. Actually, what I want is, sorry, I just want to look at the node.
It's in JS native API v8.cc.
Right, okay, right.
It will be unref. You mean the
unref? Yeah, okay, unref. Right. Right. Okay. So it's just setting an error. Right. And then. Yeah, I see. It's not an exception, but it's kind of like we wish it was almost, right? From the C++ side of things. Because we have no way, like, I guess what happens is there's no way for the caller to know that it actually failed.
Yeah, but it's already the reality, right?
It's already what?
It's already the reality. We can't get the NAPI status when it fails, when C++ exception is disabled.
Right. I'm just thinking, like in this case, if this was a maybe, it would tell you, oh, well, you know, there was an error. But I guess in this case, it's
we can do it, but when what I see in V8, the V8 API only wraps the function calling into JavaScript with maybe maybe local.
Yeah.
But they do, let's say, when this function do not call into C++, do not call into JavaScript,
right?
Returning, let's say, works with
right.
Convenient convention C++ error handling.
I wonder if, like, yeah, no, I agree. The consistent, like, not related to this PR necessarily, but I do wonder if we should actually add a version flavor of these that returns a status.
Let's say we can add a new parameter to receive the status pointer, and when the status pointer is not a null pointer, we can set the status pointer out. That sounds good. It won't break, I believe.
Yeah, because I think that way, like, the problem we're struggling with is we can't actually, like, there's no way for the person to figure out, oh, it didn't work, right? And
yeah.
So yeah, so I guess like, yeah, if the only time it's going to fail is if it's 0 is likely the number, then yeah, I think I'm convinced we should make this change. And I think adding that extra optional parameter would be a good thing.
Yeah, sounds good.
But I'll say, I'll go approve this, and we can probably do that in a separate PR if we want to add the extra parameter. Okay, any other ones that people have on their list to discuss?
So for mentees, I heard from Kevin that there is a few things to pick up. I picked up the I think arbitrary task for for testing.
Yep.
Doing a running test, single tests. Is that what I picked? Is there an issue for that? Or is it something?
Sorry, so the tests for which thing, I mean, for running a single test versus running all of the tests.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know if there's an issue for that.
Okay.
I
Do
don't.
we need an
No, we don't have an issue about
I don't
this.
think it was an issue created, but it was definitely something that's come up multiple times in our meetings here. The ability to like want to be able to compile and run a single test.
Okay. I'll start working on it then probably in the next meeting we can discuss it.
Does that sound familiar
If
to
I
you, Michael?
understand correctly, we can just run, first we compile the test with node.js, and then we run the test directly by invoking the file you want to, the test file you want to run with node, then it runs a single test.
Yeah,
Right.
that's kind of the workaround, but it would be nice to be able to just say, I just want to run this one.
Right, because right now it ends up having to compile all of the C code that you have. And it would be nice if there was a way that if you just run a single one, somehow that it would only compile one and run that single test.
So you are saying that we can compile products for every test, so they have their own .node add-on binary.
I'm not sure the best implementation method to do that. Maybe it would be various defines or targets. I don't know. But I think from looking at it as the end goal of being able just to compile and run one test, I think is beneficial in the long run. But I really haven't thought of the implementation details too much.
I think also like a typical use case is like I think because we bundle, like, I'm not sure we bundle a whole bunch of separate, actually we do build a bunch of, I think we build one add-on, don't we, in the end?
Yeah, it's one add-on for exceptions and no exceptions.
Right. So like we may end up having to build the whole thing. I'm in the same ballpark as you. Like I don't know exactly what we should do, but what we do now can be painful. And I know I've had to hack around. So spending some time to look at what's useful, like, and even because even now, if you know, like Legendika said, you can figure out how to run one without recompile everything,
Right.
but it's not obvious. So like even if some things that could be useful is like a target which wouldn't do the compile if you've already compiled, or maybe if it was, because I don't think it's smart enough to know, like if you say npm test, I don't think it's smart enough to know that you haven't changed the C code since the last compile.
It is.
It
It's
is?
just
Okay.
that when we do npm test, we run node.js rebuild instead of just build. So that's another thing that we can take a look at. Because when you rebuild, obviously it has to do everything, but if you just build, it does the differences.
So even just like another target, which is like npm test without the rebuild or something, or be by default, like it's kind of like only do the rebuild if you needed one, right? Would be good.
Right.
We
and
can
then
change it by,
so go ahead.
I mean, the simplest way is to change the default. Like say the npm test just incremental compile the target. So change the command to rebuild from build, so that's the simplest way to get incremental building.
Right. Maybe it's just as simple as changing the test script or the command. Yeah. But then, yeah, it does still require you to build everything up front at least
Right.
once, which I think like in the long run, it may be too complicated of a system in order for it just to build one specific set of sources. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'd see value in that first thing of like, can we have it so that it doesn't rebuild everything on you if it doesn't need to? And then sort of the second one of it still would be nice to have a target that says just run this one test or a set of tests versus, because I know I've been in cases where like I'm like commenting out tests and stuff like that. And so those would all be useful, even if we end up, when you do have to rebuild, you have to rebuild everything, right?
Right. Okay.
And I guess because if it was doing an incremental rebuild, that'll actually, like, think of the typical case. You're working on a particular test. If the rebuild was smart enough to just recompile the one file you changed and then relink it, that's effectively what you want anyway.
Right, which would work if you're editing, your source C file.
Right.
But as soon as you make a change to the header file, now it needs to recompile everything again.
Right. Yeah, and I guess we do a bunch of that. So
because it's mainly we're editing the implementation details of the methods in the header, not necessarily the test files themselves. So if there was a way where we only compiled the specific test targets, then modifying the header wouldn't be such a big a nuisance.
Right.
But definitely have some benefit just to the rebuild or the normal incremental build for now, and then maybe go from there.
So there are two parts, right? One is the build. We are building through Node.js. It's a Node.js build. So if we are trying to build partially, then it means that we have to change the Node.js spec, the build spec. So it may not be the right up.
Yeah, so we can so the one thing of doing an incremental build, that could be fixed by changing our package.json script for npm test, because right now that runs node.js rebuild as the command, and rebuild will clean everything and then build everything again. If we just change that to build or create a new script task that uses build, then it will do the incremental build instead.
Is it okay? I'll check.
So that's like the first step that we can work on. And then the next step would be to figure out some way that we can actually change the build sources such that it's only compiling certain ones that we designate.
Okay. And the other part is the npm test. We are still running through npm, right? The tests are run through npm, I guess.
Yes, there's a test index file that gets ran in the test folder, index.js, and then that has an enumeration of all of the tests that get ran.
Okay, and that is what we are talking about, is that whenever we do an npm test, we are not able to run a single test. We have to hack around to run a specific test. Is that what we are saying? Okay.
Correct. We have to hack around by not running the index, but manually running the test file through Node, which will run that specific JavaScript test, but it still requires that everything has been compiled in the C code for all of the tests.
So anytime we want to run, what we do is we go to package.json and replace the index.js with the specific wrapper function we want to test. So do that hack in the package.json and then run it? Is that what we are doing right now?
It's
What is the hack?
a little harder. Like in the index.js, I usually go in. There's some existing code which already splices out tests. So like I've in the past said, okay, like let's splice out everything except for a few things, or you can go and run the like they have a usually the tests have a JS file which you can run, but often you also have to figure out, well, I have to pass in some extra command line options to make it work. And then also like if you want to run it under the debugger, because of it's starting like without those command line options, it starts another process. So the whole thing, yeah. So like I don't know, like if npm is going to start another process, that's going to get us in trouble as well. But ideally, you know, at least in the cases I've been, you want to run this test possible by itself, and then also you may want to run it under Valgrind, or you might want to run it under the debugger. So if we can make it a little bit easier to do that.
Okay. I'll check on that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I have to sign off though now.
Yep.
So we will be in touch online.
Yep.
Talk to you
Thanks.
guys later. Yep. Bye.
Talk to you later. Sorry, go ahead. I don't know, Deepak, if you had any other questions before we move on to see if there's anything else.
I don't have it.
Okay.
No, Michael, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Let us just take a look. I don't see anything too brand new here. Let's take just a quick look under. Although I guess Legendikas, I did have one question in, there was maybe one in here. So I think that's worth, I wanted to ask you about that. Where is that? Is that a PR? Oh, yeah, it's a PR. Okay. Yeah.
27.
Okay. Oops. So there we go. No, sorry, 927. What happened to me there? Let me just go there. 927. Right. So I just my one question was understanding a little bit for me the different options, because I think it's reading pretty good now, except I still wondered about this one thing, which was, where are we? Files changed. It was really like sometimes you've got unwrap or and let's just find one of the tests.
I have just replaced most of the unwrap or in the test source with unwrap.
Okay.
And in the case of exception checking, we just removed the default value defined in the unwrap or definition, and so that the coding side will have to set the default value manually.
Okay. Okay. So basically, right. Okay. So that answers one of my questions. That like, and in this maybe find the implementation of that. The maybe unwrap. Where are we? Here we are. Right. Like this is like. The maybes, what they do is they force real code to actually check if an exception is pending, right? Because if you do the unwrap and it is pending, it'll like throw an error. I think
the process will abort.
Process will abort, right? So if you right, so in the tests we don't expect an exception, so these wrappers just sort of assume things are going to be okay, right?
Yeah, it's very convenient and suited in the case.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like, let me just, where's the implementation of our helper?
You can scroll to the top and there is a little, yeah, it's on the top, that the jump to button.
Okay, jump to button. So we're
on the left.
Jump to, yeah, okay.
Yeah. There it is, and the test helpers.
Test, okay, test. Helper, this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So like in this case, this return may be unwrapped. That will cause an abort if there's a pending exception, right?
Yeah, it's not checking on the pending exception, but it's checking if the value is empty. But
Right.
if the value is empty, it implies that there is a pending exception.
Right, okay. So the equivalent in the code in here would be something that would say if pending exception abort, otherwise
No.
return no.
And when maybe it's disabled, there is no, like say, maybe type defined in the source. So it work like what we have now and just doing nothing.
Right, but that's sort of like our test code is kind of like not best practice because, you know, it's only test code, right?
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if like in here, it would be if we were checking all those, checking for exception in all those places, in the else, it would be something like, you know, if pending exception, then abort, otherwise return the value, right?
We can't get the npm in the maybe unwrap since the type name T might not be the NP value.
Right,
it
okay.
can be primitive Boolean or anything.
Okay. Okay. So we can't do that. Okay, that makes sense. I was just wondering, like, is there any, would it make any sense for us to do something to show better practice? But you can't really, the maybe is what's letting you do better checking and in helping the compiler enforce that. So
yes, maybe
yeah, okay.
What we want maybe do is that kind of thing.
Right, okay. So yes, okay. No, that helps me. Okay, I think I've got it. If you've already changed all this, because I didn't really have any other questions. I think everything else was made sense to me. So
Cool.
okay. Thanks. Let's see there. So in there, I didn't see anything. Let's just take a quick look at Node and see if there's any issues. Actually, we don't need to have this be an issue, and we want to say Node API. Why? I didn't find anything, any of the Node API tags. API, I don't think though. Unless there just aren't any. Let me just. Okay, maybe that's. Okay, there are some. So. Right, this one. I think, yeah, I went ahead and I think I didn't have any more questions on that. So that's good. Okay, I don't see anything too new there. So no, I don't see anything that jumps out at me. So any other things or topics we should talk about before we close out this week? No, it sounds good. So Deepak, welcome. Thanks for joining to help out on this front. And I think you're connected with Kevin there. But if you have any questions and you want to reach out to the rest of us, as do you have our emails? If you're talking, Deepak, you're on mute. Oh, maybe Deepak's distracted. Anyway, okay, so let's just make sure if, you know, if Deepak, you don't have access to our emails, then just let us know and we'll make sure we connect you so you can ask other team members questions too. Otherwise, let's close out for this week and we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time. Oh,
Okay, bye.
Yep, talk to you later. Bye.
See you later, Michael. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, talk to you later.